Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today I am talking about Classic Monsters Unleashed, edited by James Aquilone, published by Crystal Lake Publishing. This is an anthology of new stories of famous creatures. That's what it says on the back. This is the Kickstarter backer copy. It came with some stickers and a print and a poster and this t-shirt with one of my favorite quotes from Frankenstein. As of this recording, it is not available to the general public yet, but I will have a link to the pre-order in the description below, which eventually, I think it comes out in July 2022. So eventually it will be available to order. I assume you can use the same link. Before I get into this, this is my second time recording this video. As I neared the end of the first recording, there was a huge disturbance outside. And I have the window open because it's a really nice night and it's been relatively quiet. But there was a huge mass of teenagers, I think, outside screaming and yelling. I ended the recording, was just about to call the cops when a police car pulled up and everybody took off. They dispersed. So all of that was on the first video. So I decided to delete that and record again. So here we go. Take two for Classic Monsters Unleashed. So some of the authors in this book: Joe R. Lansdale, F. Paul Wilson, Jonathan Mayberry, Lisa Morton, Owl Going Back, Linda D. Addison, Maurice Broaddus. Just a great lineup of authors. And you've got, again, I'm going to take a look at the back here: Dracula, Frankenstein's Monster, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Moreau, The Headless Horseman, The Invisible Man, The Phantom of the Opera, and many more. And these stories run the gamut from prequel stories to sequels to retellings from a different perspective to stories that are simply inspired by these famous monsters. Some take place at the time of the original stories. Some take place modern day. There's one that has technology that doesn't exist in this world. So I don't know if technically it's in the future or if it's just, an alternate world where this technology exists, but it's sort of modern day. So it runs the gamut as far as storytelling goes. And then, as with most anthologies, the stories run the gamut from okay to really, really good. And just to give an example, I'm just going to look at the table of contents, and Jonathan Mayberry has a story called, I'm not sure how you pronounce this, Holland Legion. There's an accenty thing, an umlaut. I'm not sure, the little double dots over the O, so I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. But it's a story inspired by Dr. Moreau. It's essentially a sequel to that takes place during World War II. Let's see. Old Monsters Never Die, Tim Waggoner. A really good werewolf story. I don't think I'm giving anything away. It's pretty clear from the beginning that it's a werewolf story. I'm trying to, of course, going to try to avoid spoilers. But, Tim Waggoner, great author. Really interesting story. I'm a fan of werewolves, so I dug that one. Dreams by F. Paul Wilson is a Frankenstein's monster story that I absolutely loved. One of my favorites in this collection. An interesting look at the Frankenstein monster. So I really dug it, not just because Frankenstein is my favorite of the classic horror novels. Blood Hunt by Owl Going Back is a Dracula story that takes place in the Old West, Old American West. Not all of the stories are really scary or serious. Mummy Calls by Simon Bestwick is one of those. It's a great story, but it's I don't want to say too much. It's I love the way it's written. I love the device of the story. That's not the word I'm actually looking for, but I really like what Simon Bestwick does here. I'm just going in order. It seems I'm going to try to avoid mentioning every story. The Viscount and the Phantom by Lucy A. Snyder is a really interesting look at the world of the Phantom of the Opera. Another character I really like, and not just because the Phantom's name is Eric with a K. And Lucy throws in another monster, as well as the Phantom. So, yep, all sorts of good stuff. We've got Richard Christian Matheson. Lisa Morton, Hacking the Horseman's Code, is really fun. I really like that one a lot. Now, I'm going to mention Gary A. Braunbeck's story, whose title I can't pronounce, simply because it's a really, really good story. But I'm going to admit, I did not understand the ending. I feel like I missed something. It's a really well written story. It's really interesting. But in the last 2 pages, something happens, and I just feel like there's something I didn't know or something I didn't catch. Something. So, I know somebody out there is going to read this. So when you read that story, let me know what I'm missing that just throws. I'm confused by the ending. Still a good story, though. Picture of Doriana Gray. A modern look at TikTok, Instagram stories, the whole social media thing. That's a Mercedes M. Yardley story. There's a Blob story about the Blob by Linda D. Addison, which the title doesn't quite go with the story. I see there is a connection, but the title, fireworks going off, which I guess is appropriate because the title of this story is De Noise, De Funk, De Blob. And I understand there's a connection to the story, but the title feels lighthearted and comedic a bit, whereas the story is not. Great story. Big fan of the Blob here, but it was just, there was a little disconnect for me there. Okay, so I like Enter the Dragon by Leverett Butts and Docker Stoker. Not sure how you pronounce his first name. He's the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker. It's a Dracula story, and it uses the same style as Dracula. There's a word for it, and I just heard it the other day, and I can't remember it, but it's when a story is told all through like letters, journals, things like that, which of course is what Dracula is. And this, even though this is a modern day story, it's through emails, news articles, a YouTube video, texts. But it's still that, whatever that word is that I can't remember, I can always remember the word. So when you know a word but you can't think of it, that's called lethologica. And I can always remember the word lethologica. Is that irony? That I always remember the word for when you can't remember a word? Anyway, so Enter the Dragon, really dug that. God of the Razor by Joe R. Lansdale, which seems to me to be the name of a number of different stories that he's written. God of the Razor is a character he's had in a number of things. But I swear there's a comic book story called God of the Razor that's not the same as this. There could be a slight difference in the titles, but great story. It's Joe Lansdale. The last one I want to mention specifically is the Maurice Broaddus story, which is called The Invisible Man, The Fire This Time. And it's a great story, and what I love that Mr. Broaddus did is he basically takes 2 novels called The Invisible Man and makes a story using both of those. So, of course, you have The Invisible Man, H.G. Wells, and then The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, which is about racism. And that's essentially we have it's a story about race. It's a story about people of color being invisible to, uh, the majority, white folks. And although, how much do I say? It does talk about there's a time when people of color are invisible, and a time when they're far too visible in a negative way. I don't know if I'm putting that correctly, but it also deals with not just sort of institutional invisibility, but actual invisibility, like the H.G. Wells. I don't know if I'm being clear in what I'm trying to say, but it's a great story. So, yeah, that should give you a taste of the kind of things we have in here. There's one of the stories, Seanan McGuire's story, deals with an old Hammer film. The classic British horror movies from Hammer Studios. It's a sequel, a side story. Don't know exactly what you'd call it, but it's absolutely, it name drops characters from a Hammer film. So yeah, all sorts of different creatures, all sorts of different takes on classic monsters. I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5 on Goodreads. Well, it's going to be a 4. I'm not bumping it up to a 5. It's not a perfect anthology. Some of the stories are amazing. There's one that I found a little disappointing. It's not a bad story. It's just not. It's fine. So the range, I guess, goes from it's fine to they're fantastic. So for me, that's a 4.5. I can't bump it up to 5, and you can't give half stars, so it's going to get a 4 on Goodreads. But I highly recommend it. Classic Monsters Unleashed, Crystal Lake Publishing, James Aquilone. Definitely one I think you should pick up. And coming to Kickstarter soon is going to be, I believe it's just called Shakespeare Unleashed. So it's going to be a bunch of horror stories based on Shakespeare. And they what they did with this, I guess this technically has nothing to do with a review, but obviously a lot of big name authors in here, but then they also opened it up to just open submissions so people could send their stories in. So there are some lesser known authors as well, and I believe they're doing that with the Shakespeare Unleashed once it hits Kickstarter, excuse me, because I've already seen 1 or 2 people mention that they're going to have stories in there, and as I said, it's not even in Kickstarter yet. I am going to back that one as well, because this was well worth it, so I have hopes for the next one as well. But anyway, all right, Classic Monsters Unleashed. My question for this video: what is your favorite classic monster? Mine, in literature, is Frankenstein, as I mentioned. My favorite of the classic horror novels. And as far as movies go, especially if we're talking Universal movies, it's Creature from the Black Lagoon. As much as I enjoy the others, there's just something about that wonderful Beauty and the Beast type story. The locations, the creature itself, it's a beautiful creature. Absolutely love Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm a fan of the Blob, the original. I love the original movie. I like the remake as well, but I like the original more, maybe because it's one I grew up with. So I'm naming 3. There's 3 of my favorite classic monsters. I mean, I am a fan of werewolves. Vampires have grown on me over the years, but let's say Frankenstein, Creature of the Blob. There we go. What are your favorites? Classic monsters. Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Once you get this book and read it, tell me what I'm missing from that Gary Braunbeck story. And comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith. And until next time, read more books.